I. When I stepped off the evening train at Grisholm Junction, grit hissed across the platform like sandpaper on bone. The factory that had burned 3 nights earlier, Pendarvis Textile, still blackened the western sky, a dead tooth in the mouth of town. I'd read the preliminary report on the ride up. 6 witnesses, 1 night watchman dead, building a total loss. My job was simple: determine if Pendarvis's policy covered the blaze or if arson nullified the claim. Simple, except the case officer who'd opened the file had quit after a single day. The email he left behind said only, "Something wrong with the statements. They're blank." Blank statements don't scare me. They merely mean people are lying or someone's shredding evidence. I've built my reputation on coaxing truth from Ash. The station master was locking up when I approached. I asked directions to the boarding house I'd booked. He raised a lantern and his eyes snagged on my face as though he half recognized me. "Been here before?" he asked. "First time," I said. "Strange. You look like a boy I used to see running the freight platforms. Must have been 25 years ago." He chuckled to himself, turned the lock, and left me under the dim sodium lamps, feeling as though the air had shifted a fraction out of alignment. 2. The boarding house smelled of boiled cabbage and lemon polish. Mrs. Bramble, proprietress, wore her hair in a fortress of pins. She was expecting me. The company had telegraphed ahead. Over lukewarm tea, she asked what brought me. "Insurance investigation," I said. "Factory fire. Terrible business." She glanced at the hallway mirror behind me and paused, as if the reflection had startled her. "Do you have kin in Grisholm?" "No. Stranger things," she murmured, then produced an iron key and warned me about the taps. Left one spat rust, right one shrieked like a kettle. 3. I set my briefcase on the bed, flipped the brass latches, and withdrew 6 slim folders, Witness A through Witness F, fresh copies burned onto archival paper that morning in the city. I wanted to review their statements before interviewing them in person. I opened Witness A. The page bore a childish scrawl. "June 12th, Mrs. B says today the whistles at Pendarvis sound like giants crying. I hid under the freight stairs with Jip because giants can't crawl. Jip says they're just steam valves, but he's wrong." I shut the folder. My pulse skidded. I flipped it open again. The text remained. A diary entry, unsigned, dated 1991, the year I turned 11. Impossible. I reached for Witness B. Inside, June 13th. Found a beetle with red wings near the dye vats. Jip dared me to lick it, but I wouldn't. I'm not stupid. Still tastes iron in the air. Papa says keep away from the mill. My throat dried. This wasn't a printing error. The pages looked aged, yellowed edges, faint oil spots, and in the corner of each, a penciled sketch of a small dog, my childhood dog, Jip, a terrier I'd owned in a suburb 300 miles south. I hadn't been within 50 miles of Grisholm before today. I fool. I left the folders where they lay and crossed to the washstand. The mirror showed a face I trusted. Thick hair, premature gray at the temples, faint dent above the right brow. But behind my eyes a boy stirred, the boy who'd written about hiding under freight stairs. I splashed water on my cheeks, ignoring the kettle shriek. Logic first. A prank or forgery. Someone replaced the witness statements with manufactured documents to needle the investigator, push the claim through, or block it. But why use fragments from a diary that mimicked my own childhood voice? How would they even acquire that? My actual diaries, years I kept them, were boxed in my apartment closet in the city. Unless I was confusing memories. Childhood can be a hall of smoke. V. Morning brought low clouds and a smell like singed cloth. I walked to Pendarvis Textile. Fire crews had packed up, only twisted roof joists remained, charred into letterless signposts. Guard tape fluttered around collapsed brick walls. I circled the perimeter, mapping the pattern. Deepest burn near the boiler room, yet investigators suspected accelerant. Made sense. Arsonists often splash solvent to mask a faulty furnace. A deputy fire chief met me at the gate. Durston, stocky, red-eyed from fatigue. I asked to see the preliminary physical evidence. "Sure," he said, "but you've probably read the witness statements already." "Not yet. It came out too fast." He shrugged. "You'll find they don't say much. Folks here get foggy." 6. I scheduled interviews. Emmett Craw, loom mechanic; Connie Spivey, payroll clerk; Edsel Moore, truck driver; Sister Elodie, who taught at the convent school next door; and twins Ruth and Mina Klein, seniors pulling summer shifts. 6 living witnesses. The night watchman, Abel Dose, had died inside trying to shut off gas lines. I started with Craw at the pub beside the canal. He smelled of hops and singe. "Tell me what you saw," I said, recorder on the table. Craw rubbed his beard. "Thought I heard a child singing." "Inside the factory?" He nodded. "But couldn't be. Third shift's adults only. Then I smelled kerosene, alarms tripped, heat so thick my teeth hurt." He signed the transcript I printed from the bar's back office. I thanked him and slid the document into a fresh folder. Back in my room, I opened Craw's freshly signed statement. The signature remained, but the text above had changed. June 14th. Ran with Jip to the canal. Found a gold button near the locked gate. I think it's from Papa's coat. Told Mama maybe we can sew it back if he comes home. My stomach lurched. Craw's words, child singing, kerosene, gone. The page looked as though it had lived 2 decades in a trunk. Yet I'd watched it print minutes earlier. 7. At dusk, I walked the streets, chasing the feeling that a memory sat 1 step ahead of me, ducking corners. I passed the convent school, its bell tower showing smoke stain from the fire. A courtyard gate clanged. A nun in gray habit, Sister Elodie, stood within, palms clasped. "You're the investigator?" "I am." "You should know some things won't behave here. Paper, especially." "Why?" She turned her gaze to the ruined factory, ember glow of sunset behind it. "Pendarvis is built on time that never got folded right. The earth keeps trying to iron itself, but the creases show." Before I could ask more, a bell rang inside. She dipped her head and left. 8. I called my manager, Sloan, from the payphone outside the grocery. "Any chance someone tampered with the witness files before I arrived?" I asked. "Negative," Sloan said. "Those PDFs came directly from the fire marshal's office. We only printed them." "What about my childhood diaries? Anyone access my apartment?" "Ray, do I need to pull you off this?" "I'm fine." A lie. The receiver sweated in my palm. "Close the file if you need mental health days," he said softer. I hung up. I had 2 facts. 1. Witness files refused to stay truthful. 2. The replacements referenced a boy, a dog, a missing father, and a mill town that matched Grisholm. Either I was hallucinating or Grisholm was haunting me with a life I never lived. I reread each corrupted entry. They formed a sequence, days in mid-June 1991. Entry after entry mentioned Papa, always absent, always tied to the mill. The last one, belonging to Witness F's folder, read, June 16th. Night is paint thinner. Mama says lightning could strike the roof and set the whole works ablaze. If giants cry, then the mill could drown, but fire beats water beats giants. I hear Papa downstairs. That was all. No resolution. June 17th onward was blank. I lay awake, heart drumming, and remembered something I shouldn't have. The taste of iron in summer air. My childhood suburb had no ironworks, no canal, no factory whistle, yet the taste was real, blooming now on my tongue. X. The next morning I interviewed Connie Spivey in her sun-yellow kitchen. She'd lost a cousin in the blaze. Her hands shook pouring coffee. She recounted seeing a flicker behind the dye vats, then a roar. When she'd finished, she asked my age. I told her. She hummed. Could have sworn you were older. You've got 40-year eyes. I left puzzled. I decided to interview the final two witnesses together, the Klein twins, recuperating from smoke inhalation at their mother's house. They spoke in tandem, trading sentences like juggling pins. One detail landed heavy. We heard a man shouting inside the boiler room, "Jip, get out of there!" "Jip?" I said. "Yeah, weird dog name," Mina added. My pen slipped. I hadn't mentioned the name to anyone. ICSI. Files transformed as soon as they entered the briefcase. Spivey's statement dissolved into June 15th. Found Mama crying over the stove. She burned the rice again. Said Papa's been sleeping at the mill. Not to worry. Sometimes men need space. I told her space is cold. And the Klein twins' joint statement became June 16th, evening. Storm clouds pile like dirty blankets. Papa's coat still missing a button. If the mill lights go out, maybe he'll come home. I'll keep the candle ready. I was holding a biography of a person who wasn't quite me, yet matched my handwriting, my dog, my sense of metaphor. Space is cold. I needed the origin. In the absence of objective paper, I'd seek physical proof. Tuthun. The factory ruins had cooled enough for limited access. I fetched a respirator and entered through a breach in the north wall. Moonlight silvered slag heaps. I located the place Craw called the Singing Corridor, a grain chute where wind moaned. A steam valve glinted, melted into a wavering trumpet. Closer to the boiler room, floor tiles were buckled. A circle of brickwork had blown outward, black halos on the plaster. Arson, definitely, but with a peculiar focal point, like a hearth built under the floor. Inside the boiler control room, water still dripped from pipes. On the warped console, something winked. A brass button etched with a curled letter P. I plucked it gingerly. The metal was warm, though the air was frigid. Memory slammed me. Mama sewing beside a kerosene lamp, saying, "We'll fix his coat when he's ready to be a father again." I staggered. I had been here. Through. I left the ruins shaking, button in pocket, and found the convent gate unlocked. Inside, lanterns lit a cloister. Sister Elodie waited. "You followed the crease," she said. "Did I live here in 1991? My voice was raw. "Parts of you. Your mother escaped an ugly marriage. Griholm offered work and hiding. She lodged at the railway boarding house. You've met its echo. You were shy, carried a notebook, wrote about giants and fire. Then why don't I remember? Because the night you predicted came. Your father found the town. He set the mill alight to flush your mother out, burn her wage, burn her shelter. But something slipped. Time, memory, the very paper you wrote on. Trauma can bend them. Griholm sits on a fault line of sorrow. Some children heal by forgetting. The town cooperates. The bell tolled midnight. 34. I sat on a stone bench, clutching the button, mind spiraling. The witness files, why do they become my diary? Because you wrote truth. Truth gravitates. New testimonies cannot overwrite something so deep. Paper near that truth reverts, wanting to hold the original words. "That's not possible," I whispered. "Yet here you are." I remembered the night watchman, Abel Dose. "Someone died this time." "Echoes cost lives," she said gently. "Your father's hatred doesn't know history. We must sever it." 15. We devised a test. I would write a fresh statement about the fire, include deliberate errors, then lock it in the convent archives, insulated from the mill's influence. If it changed, influence extended. If not, the factory site was the epicenter. We could perform a ritual of closure, her phrasing, that might stop the bleed. I spent dawn drafting. The fire began in the eastern dye room. False. I signed and dated the sheet. We sealed it in a tin box, placed the box inside a lead-lined locker beneath the chapel. We'd check at dusk. Skemmed. Meanwhile, I returned to the ruins, scanning for accelerant residue. For all the town's eeriness, a legal verdict still mattered. I collected char samples, photographs, mapped burn vectors. 3 hours in, I located a melted plastic canister stamped with a paint-thinner brand banned in state lines. The handle bore prints, bubbled but salvageable. Bagged it. I also found the outline of a boot in soot, heel crushed where the secret fire pit had vented. I took plaster. Evidence pointed to an external culprit, not a boiler malfunction. If the culprit was an echo of my father, who among the living bore that echo? Section team. At dusk, Sister Ality unlocked the tin box. Inside, my statement was intact, word for word. So the influence was local to Pendarvis, or to any document related directly to the witness accounts. Closure must happen where the first break occurred, she said. Between father and son, truth and fear. You possess both halves. But my father, he died years ago. I'd attended a funeral, a casket lowered. Hadn't I? Bodies rest. Anger wanders. We carried a canvas satchel. Inside, the 6 corrupted witness files, now essentially my lost diary. We also carried kerosene, matches, and a brick of beeswax. She said softened transitions. Night cloaked the ruins. Wind threaded holes in the roof. Sparks of paint dust twitched like fireflies. Xut. We set a small brazier on the concrete where the secret pit had vented both in 1991 and last week. I laid the files inside. The brass button I placed on top, a seal. Sister Alody sprinkled crushed jasmine. For memory, she said, and chips of beeswax. Speak what the boy feared, she urged. I recited. He feared the giants and the whistles, the smell of iron. He feared Papa's footsteps on the boards. He feared fire. My voice tremored, becoming smaller. Flames caught. The pages curled, ink blistering into orbs. Smoke rose through the aperture where Roof once sat. In the smoke, I swear a figure walked. Tall coat missing a button. I felt a hand brush my shoulder, not unkind but heavy with regret. Then it dispersed. The fire consumed to ash. The brass buttons sagged, molten, and dripped between cracks. Nighttime. Sirens whooped, fire crew called by some passerby, but by the time engines arrived, only a gentle wood smoke lingered. I showed my investigator badge, explained controlled evidence disposal. They grumbled, left. I returned to the boarding house. My room smelled subtly of jasmine, though windows were shut. On the bed waited 6 folders. I held my breath and opened Witness A. It contained Emmett Craw's statement, unaltered, signatures intact. I checked the rest, all correct. The diary entries were gone, like fever sweat. Relief struck me with a dull ache, immediately shadowed by loss. Those pages were the only primary source of a summer my conscious mind had discarded. Now I had only phantom taste of iron and the curve of a dog's tail vanishing under freight stairs. XX. I filed the final report. Arson by unknown party using illegal solvent. Policy nullified, claim denied. A just conclusion. Before leaving town, I stopped at the canal lock where the diary said I'd found a button. Water lapped, indifferent. I dropped a smooth stone in, heard the plunk. Across the water, kids rode bikes, chasing fireflies. One terrier yipped, chasing them. For a moment, I almost called out its name. At the station, the master clipped my ticket. "Sure you didn't live here once?" he asked, half smiling. "I passed through," I said, the words tasting truthful now. "Long ago." He touched his cap. "Well, safe journey back." The train pulled out. Griholm receded, factory ruins dwindling to a smudge. I closed my eyes. When I opened my briefcase, the files remained stable. Yet in the secret pocket, beyond where any documents lay, I found one scrap of paper smelling faintly of soot. In a child's hand. Giants can't crawl where water runs. Keep the canal full. I folded it, slid it into my wallet behind my license. Proof or memento? Uncertain. But I carried it home, a small insurance against forgetting, written by a boy whose life I now remember was mine.